So today we're going to have a little look at differential association theory in relation to criminal behaviour. Now, differential association theory has been widely accepted for a long time, and it has been considered valid pretty much since it was first developed in the 1930s. So it's clear that it has definitely stood the test of time in terms of validity and general acceptance by people who use it. So it was first created by Sutherland in 1939, and it's considered to be the social learning theory of crime. So if you think back to social learning theory, which is learning through observation and imitation, Sutherland proposes that offending is learned in the same way as any other behaviour, through observation and imitation, and through the relationships and associations with the people around us. So it marks a very significant change from the prevalent theories up until that point, because right up until this theory was first developed, crime was generally seen as being genetically predetermined or due to some kind of flaw in character. So thinking back to the lessons we've already covered, the flaw in character could be the criminal personality, such as Isaac proposed, or genetically predetermined, also like personality, or through the existence of some kind of candidate gene or something along those lines. Whereas this one takes a drastic turn away from these views. So the idea was, Sutherland wanted to establish a set of scientific principles that could explain all different types of crime, and his aim was that he wanted to show that the conditions which are said to cause the crime should be present when the crime is present, and those conditions should be absent when the crime is absent. So that means that criminals who commit crime should have the conditions in place to, make them commit the crime, whereas those who don't commit the crime shouldn't have those conditions. Now, thinking back to what our previous lessons have been like, that wasn't the case. So if you think the criminal personality, it's very easy for somebody to be highly extroverted and highly neurotic but not be a criminal, which means that the conditions that could cause the crime were in place. However, the people may never actually go on to commit crime. Equally, with the genetic and neural explanations, or with the atavistic form, it's very easy for somebody to have those genetic predispositions, or very easy for somebody to have a certain cranial feature that, according to research, is associated with crime without that person actually ever going ahead and committing a crime. So Sutherland was very clear: if somebody commits a crime, then the conditions need to be in place for that crime to have been committed, or for that criminal behaviour to have been learnt. However, if the crime isn't committed, then the conditions are also not there. So very different to what we've said so far. And he aimed to create that theory, and it was supposed to discriminate between individuals who actually go ahead and commit a crime and those who don't ever go ahead and commit a crime, regardless of their race, their class, their ethnic background, or anything else like that. So, as with social learning theory, like I said earlier, offending can be learned just like any other behaviour, through interactions with those people who are closest to you. And crime, or learning crime, comes in two different factors. You've got learning attitudes towards crime, which comes from your nearest and dearest, and also learning specific criminal acts as well, which is also most likely to come from your nearest and dearest. Just as an example, you see a picture here of the Soprano crime family, fictional family from the TV show The Sopranos. But if you just see who we've got here, we've got the uncle right there. We've got the uncle who's not really a member of the family, but this is your Uncle Vinny, for example. So not really blood uncle, but still uncle. Then you've got the mother. You've got the head of the family, the father. You've got the son right here. You've got the daughter. You've got the nephew. On the right, next to the nephew, the old man, is the granddad. And then you've got the other uncle as well. Oh, that's disappeared. Bear with me. So this is the kind of setup. I mean, it's an obviously a very extreme setup, but just to illustrate that the people who are around, those nearest and dearest, they're all part of the crime family. They all have certain attitudes towards the crimes. They all have certain expertise, and they all carry out criminal behaviours because they are all part of the criminal family. So it's reasonable to assume that they're all learning from each other and that they're all picking up things from each other. And actually, the son and the daughter, they're fairly well positioned to actually go on and learn attitudes and learn behaviors from the people that are around them because of how embedded they already are in that criminal world. Like I say, this is a very extreme example, but extreme examples work very often. Okay, so if you just take back what I was saying earlier about you learning criminal attitudes and criminal behavior, we have this idea that pro-criminal attitudes are actually learned via the socialization process in a family. So socialization into a group or into a family involves being exposed to values and being exposed to attitudes towards the law, so pro and or anti-criminal. Obviously, there's a lot of other socialization that goes on as well, but that is a part of it. So if the number of pro-criminal attitudes outweigh the number of anti-criminal attitudes, then it's reasonable to assume that offending will occur. So actually, Sutherland was saying that we can actually predict how likely it is that offending will occur if we know the frequency and the intensity and the duration of the exposure to a certain attitude or to a certain set of attitudes. Moving on, you've also got the learning of specific criminal acts via the socialization process. But this isn't just a socialization process within a family, it can be within a community or a social group as well. So the idea is that, if you've got people around you who, you spend a lot of time with and who are part of your group or your community or your family, and they do carry out criminal acts, then chances are you are going to learn from them how to carry out those criminal acts. So aside from actually telling us how we learn how to carry out certain acts, differential association theory can also explain how crime breeds within certain communities or certain social groups as well, because they're all kind of learning, or they could all be learning from each other a little bit. The theory also can explain why convicts, after they've been released from prison, very often go on to reoffend as well, because very often what you'll find happens is that they've actually learnt how to improve their technique or how to be better criminals whilst they've been in prison, and that will happen through observational learning and imitation, or even through direct tuition in how to do something from one of the other inmates, or if this hasn't happened in prison, then potentially from somebody else in your social group or community. So it's very good in not only explaining where crime comes from, but also how crime can be learned, and how certain acts can be learned, and how attitudes are passed on, and why crime often becomes more prevalent in certain groups and communities as well. So a nice theory that has stood the test of time, and is probably one of the most valid and accepted theories on criminal behaviour. Okay, that's the end. A nice short one there for you. I'll do a separate video with the evaluations in the coming days. Okay, thank you.